Hello, happy Friday to you. Hope you are having a good one. It is Fabric Friday here at Let's Get Sewing, and so we're having an absolutely gorgeous Friday here in Kansas City, and it is about 80 degrees now, and we're going to be talking about flannel because who knew? I thought by October flannel would be a good topic. Hopefully, it's a little more relevant where you are. It's going to be another week or two till we get into good flannel weather here, but that's okay. Um, it's Fabric Friday, where I talk about all sorts of things fabric, because when you understand your fabric better, you can make your fabric work better for you. And so we talked about things like how fabrics are made. We talk about different kinds of fabrics, all sorts of topics. So today it is flannel, and we have talked an awful lot about cottons, cotton weaves, different kinds of weaves in cottons. Flannel is not a specific type. What do I want to say? It's not a specific fiber of fabric. So you could have a cotton flannel, you can have a wool flannel, you can have flannels made from synthetics or synthetic blends. Usually it would be a synthetic blend, like a cotton poly blend or something, or a wool acrylic blend maybe. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that one. But one thing to remember about flannel is it can be made from a lot of different things. And you know from our past things and just from experience doing laundry in general that different fabrics have to be treated differently as far as washing and sewing and that kind of thing. So you need to be aware whether you're getting a cotton flannel or a wool flannel, what kind of flannel you're getting, so that you know how to care for it and what kind of things you need for sewing with it. The cottons that I'm going to show, or the flannels that I'm going to show you today, are all made of cotton. They're all 100% cotton. As much as I love to work with wool and love to sew with wool, and it is just yummy to sew with because it does the things that you want it to, I don't like to wear wool. It just scratches me. People say, oh, but it's a soft wool. No, I just don't wear a whole lot of wool. If I do, I have to have full long sleeves and turtleneck underneath it. So what I will be showing you today is all cotton flannels. And so I'm going to start with this shirt, which is one of my favorite winter cool weather things to wear. Like I said, it's 80 degrees outside. I don't know if this is going to make it all the way through our live today. If it does, it'll probably be coming off as soon as we're done because I'm very warm right now. But that brings me to one of our first qualities of flannel, and that is its warmth. So flannel is a regular weave fabric. It is a slightly looser weave than what you would see in like your quilting cottons or even some of your really fine wool fabrics. The yarns need to be a little bit looser, and I don't think they're necessarily thicker, but they have to be a little more loosely woven. And that is because after the flannel is woven and printed, or it may or may not be printed, we'll talk about that in a second, then they run it through a machine with a brush that's kind of going in the opposite direction of the way the fabric's running, so that that special brush really stirs up some of the fibers in the cotton or in the wool or in your blend and makes some of that. It's literally taking the fuzz from your fabric and making it stand up a little bit to give it that soft, fuzzy feeling. It literally is fuzzy because they've agitated up some of those fibers. When we have that kind of fuzzy feel to the fabric, we call that the nap of the fabric, and that is the part that is standing up. And we'll need to remember that in just a little bit when I talk about pressing your flannel. Nap is different from pile, and we'll talk about pile in other Fabric Fridays, but just remember that when your fabric has any kind of fuzz or brushed surface like this, we call that the nap of the fabric, and that is what makes flannel so nice and warm no matter what it's made from. When you stand those fibers up, they trap air and it automatically becomes an insulative fabric. And that gives the extra warmth to flannel. And that's kind of what sets flannel apart from other fabrics. And one of the advantages to that is that it creates that warmth without weight. Typically, you need to make fabrics thicker, heavier to make them warmer. But because they've taken the thin cotton fabric or the thin wool fabric and agitated up those fibers, that's creating some warmth without adding weight to the fabric or to the garment or whatever it is that you are making out of it. It also means that the fabric is breathable. Some heavy fabrics or warmer fabrics are more tightly woven to lock heat or warmth inside, and that makes them less breathable. So having those yarns, when it's woven farther apart, the fabric can breathe a little bit and still maintain those warm properties. Now, we talked about the fact that flannel can be cotton, it can be wool, it can be a blend of things. There are also different ways that it can be finished as far as decorative. So this, I call it a shacket that I'm wearing. You can see the fabric on the inside is identical to the fabric on the outside. That's because this was woven with white and blue threads in the warp and weft directions, creating somewhat of a gingham-esque look to this plaid. It was woven that way, and then it was, treated and given the nap with the brushes. This is another cotton flannel that I have in my stash, and you can see, again, it has a nice plaid finish. We're going to talk about this in just a second. Flannel does not have to be a plaid, although that's very popular at this time of year. But this particular print or pattern was printed on the fabric, and we know that because the back does not look like the front. The back is much lighter than the pattern is on the front of the fabric. So in this case, they printed the cotton fabric with this particular plaid and then went back over with the brushes and created that nap that creates, or is what makes it, flannel. But you'll see here, this is not a plaid flannel. It is striped, but it's not a plaid. So your flannels don't have to be plaids, contrary to what you might see otherwise. But again, you can tell that this was printed on because the print is very dark on one side, very light on the other side of your fabric. So that is how flannel is manufactured. Either it is woven with these designs in or printed before it is brushed to become flannel. You could even have, and I have seen at the shop where I work right now, we have Christmas prints on flannel, which is really popular for things like pajamas. Same thing, the ones that we sell at our shop are cotton flannels just like this. They printed the Christmas designs on with deer and snowmen and all sorts of stuff, and then roughed them up, I guess you could say, to become flannel. So that is how flannel is made. Now, when you're sewing with flannel, there are some tips and tricks that you want to stick to. Again, remembering that it can either be cotton, wool, or a synthetic blend. You need to take note of that so that you know all of the wash instructions with it. Also, when you're sewing with it, you want to use kind of a sharp needle. Universal needle will work pretty well. Microtex would be great on a flannel fabric, just because it gets down through the fabric really well that way. But because they're a little bit looser woven, you don't necessarily need that super sharp needle. You do want, if it is cotton or a synthetic blend, you want to pre-wash your fabric. Obviously, if it's wool, you don't want to pre-wash it because then you have wool felt, and that's a whole different topic for another Fabric Friday. But if it is not wool, go ahead and pre-wash your fabric before you get started. You can press flannel. And of course, I talk often about the fact that when you're sewing, you need to be pressing as you go. So here are a few tips for pressing your flannel, because if you just lay your iron down on here and start pressing, all of those great fibers that they got brushed up to create the flannel are going to get squished back down. It's not going to look as nice, and it's not going to be as warm and insulative if you've done that. So here are a couple of tips. When you are pressing seams or pressing a collar or anything like that with flannel, use a seam roll or a tailor's ham. And I have other videos about those and how to use them. What that does is the seam roll will make it so that where you're pressing, if you imagine this was a seam roll, the iron is only going to make contact right there at the seam, and it's not going to flatten down the pile, or the nap, sorry, not pile, the nap on either side of the seam. If you need to press a collar or something like this that is going to be flat, a couple of different things. Be sure to press from the inside wherever possible, but you're going to turn a collar to the outside. It has to be pressed. So put a towel over the top of your ironing board first. The loops from the towel, from the terry cloth, are going to allow the fibers from the nap on your flannel to kind of sink down in there and not get flattened out so badly by the iron. So if you were to iron it from the wrong side, for instance, this collar, I would always iron from this side and have this side against the terry cloth so that I maintain that nice nap here so that it looks nice and maintains those insulative properties. So when you are working with it, just put a towel down on your ironing board and work from the back of the fabric. And then because flannel is slightly looser of a weave, in order to get that nice nap, it's also going to fray more easily. The larger the threads you use and the more loose the weave, the more fabric frays. And so zigzagging the edges or serging the edges is going to make life much easier for you, and it's going to keep things much nicer on the inside of your garment once it is sewn. You could also roll them back or do some kind of Hong Kong seam finish, anything to keep those threads from tangling up on the inside of the garment, especially as it's washed over time. The last thing that I wanted to share with you were just some places where flannel can be used, which you probably kind of know, but maybe some of these will spark your imagination. So obviously fall, the flannel shirts, very popular at this time of year. Flannel pajamas for Christmas or any time during the winter. Great use of flannel because it is warm, it is comfortable, but it breathes, especially breathing while you're asleep. It makes great fabric for that. You know, just regular button-up shirts. This is a big loose shacket, but basically it's a button-up shirt. Regular button-up shirts are great out of flannel as well. Any kind of winter accessories, scarves. You can make great scarves out of flannel, and I much prefer a scarf out of flannel because, like I said, I can't stand to have that wool against my face. So I love a good flannel scarf for the cold weather, and other accessories. Mittens out of flannel feel really great against your skin. Just lots of accessories that you can do out of that. As far as quilting, flannel makes a wonderful quilt backing. You can use it for piecing in your quilt. A lot of people, like I said, we sell it at the quilt shop. We make quilts out of flannel. We piece. I don't do it personally, but we have samples made up and they are made out of flannel. But some people will do the entire front in regular cotton and then put flannel on the back because that's the part of the blanket that's against you, and it feels so wonderful and soft to have that flannel against your skin. So quilt backing is another great place. But there's one other thing as far as quilting that you can do with flannel that a lot of people don't think of. Two other things actually that I'll bring up. The first one is, instead of quilt batting, people will put a layer of just a plain, usually they'll just get a plain unbleached flannel. So it looks like muslin. It's that cream color that muslin is, but then it's brushed into flannel. So basically it is muslin, and they'll buy that and put it in between the layers of their quilt instead of batting. Makes a very thin but very warm winter quilt. So that's a great place to use it. And then the last place, which you've probably seen quite a bit, are the rag quilts. Those are extremely popular, extremely easy to make, and flannel is probably your best fabric for those because it frays nicely to create that rag effect that the rag quilts or rag blankets have, and because again it is so warm, feels so good against the skin because of that brushed nap on the surface. So that is my overview of flannel fabrics. Again, remembering that flannel is a finishing technique. It is not what the fabric is. It can be cotton, it can be wool, it can be a synthetic blend, but flannel is wonderful to work with whenever you want something great for cold weather wear. Like I said, it's almost, well, it is the middle of October here. We're heading into the end of October now. It is still near 80 degrees. So now that we're done, I'm going to get out of this flannel shirt and save it for a little bit colder weather. But thank you so much for joining me on Fabric Friday. And now let's get sewing.